very colorful.
Why does the chair have holes in them?
In case there's water.
These look like the same chairs that I have in school.
Is it?
Yeah, but except they don't have the holes because it's not going to rain inside the classroom.
Ah. Here we are.
We do like to point out on the left over here, that huge stadium over in CG. Otherwise known as the G. It is Australia's shrine to sport, that stadium, the largest one here in Australia, seated capacity by people. Now the first bridge we're going to transit under is the oldest bridge here in Melbourne. Behind that, that looks like a TV Eiffel Tower. Adjacent to that is the National Gallery of Victoria, one of many galleries and arts that we do offer here. Next up on the left is the Southgate building in the South Bank precinct. This is relatively new, it was regenerated in the 1990s. A professor of architecture actually designed this. His name was Professor Evan Walker over at the University of Melbourne. He then became a town planner and a politician, which is probably why it's so easy for him to push through his own designs. Now it was so successful that they renamed this next bridge coming up after him, the Evan Walker Bridge. And I'd just point your attention to the building adjacent to that, the large blue. Now the tower was built to commemorate the Eureka stockade troubles back in the 1850s.
That's Eureka Tower.
Gold was discovered in the fields of Bendigo, Ballarat. And so thousands of people were flocking over to Victoria to try and make it big in the goldfields. So the government wanted to impose some taxes and levies on all of those workers. They all united and said no. And the government said, well, we've got guns. And that's what the red column going down the side of it symbolises, the blood that was spilled during those troubles. Now Melbourne does have 5 of the 10 tallest skyscrapers here in Australia, which makes it the tallest city in Australia. Actually one of the tallest cities in the world with more skyscrapers per
I don't
square
know.
mile.
Too
Like
straight.
other major
Yeah.
cosmopolitan cities. Pedestrianised,
That video.
and them represent the moment of mass migration into Australia, with the first sculpture on the other side of the bridge on the mainland, South Bank here, depicting the first Aboriginal Australians who landed here some 60,000 years ago. So we'll shortly be coming up to the first of the low bridges. As we approach it, please remain seated while the Queen's Bridge was built and opened in 1889, so just 1 year after Prince's Bridge. And back then, there used to be a series of waterfalls from Queen's Bridge right the way up to Prince's Bridge. Sadly, they were demolished to make way for these bridges and also this giant swing basin that we'll be coming into in just a moment. Back in 1835, the first vessel to come and land here was called the Enterprise. And it was a wooden schooner vessel that came over from Tasmania with a bunch of sheep graziers. And they got this far on the right hand side because of the issue the rock was further upstream. So this chap called John Papin got off of the Enterprise, found fresh water on the other side and decided this will be a nice place to start a village. He wrote a treaty with the Wurundjeri people, one of the 5 clans that make up the Kulin Nation here in Victoria. And in exchange for some materials such as knives, tools, blankets, they gave him access to the land on our right, which is today the Melbourne CBD. Now the Crown found out about this about a year later, this unsanctioned settlement of Batmania, and they weren't too happy about it. So they ousted Batman. They ripped up the treaty he had written with the Wurundjeri people, and then they brought over a town planner called Mr. Robert Hoddle from the UK. He got to work right away, changing Batmania into Melbourne to what it is today. So he helped design the Hoddle Grid, which is what the CBD is built on. The roads that go north, south, east and west, and also follow the river as well. And he also designated a third of all area to parks and precincts. The building on the left-hand side here is the Crown Casino. This opened in the 1990s. And it's one of the largest and most expensive casino complexes here in the Southern Hemisphere. It's a cool cost of $2.2 billion to build.
Eureka Tower there.
I do like to come here most Thursdays after payday, put everything on red. I haven't been that successful clearly, so I'm still here, not on my multi-million-dollar yacht. What they do with my money, at sundown every evening, they take it all and turn it into natural gas. And those huge chimneys on the south bank there, at sundown, on the hour, every hour, they put in a spectacular fire show. And that is Melbourne's catchment area for all of their drinking water. So when you do make a cup of tea down here, you are in fact drinking this river. Thankfully from a lot further upstream though. So we are approaching the last of the low bridges. Please do remain seated as we go through Spencer Street's bridge. Opened in 1930. The reason they built them so low was to accommodate for the trams and the horse-drawn cars. Melbourne does have one of the most extensive tram networks in the world. So I think a lot of cities are using Melbourne to do their trams. Now as we come through the other side here, we are entering the old docklands area. This area is now the South Walk precinct. The large brass building on the left there is known as Jeff's Shed, otherwise known as the Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre. This is one of the largest open floor spaces we do have here in Australia. We host a number of conventions. Recently there was a caravan show in there, but more contentiously there was an arms show last September. Now the residents of Melbourne weren't too pleased with that, so as you can imagine, tons of protesting going on. So they closed off this whole area for about 2 weeks to avoid any dissidents from protesting. Now they have kept a lot of the original aesthetics, such as the timber wharfs, and also you can see some old dry docks up there. And where that 3-mast bark vessel is, that is the Polly Woodside. So she was built in the late 1800s, 20 years before the Titanic was, in the very same shipbuilder's yard in Northern Ireland. The only difference is this one is still floating. She became a dumb hulk later in her years. What I mean by that is dumb. They removed all methods of propulsion, such as all of the masts and sails and upper decking, and then they laden her with coal. So she was a coal hulk, a dumb coal hulk, and she would be towed along from vessel to vessel delivering coal until one day she set alight, and then the owners were going to scuttle her until 2 maritime enthusiasts decided to purchase her for £1. They towed her into the slip up here and then spent about 60,000 volunteer hours restoring her to her former glory. So as we come under Seafarers Bridge, just cock your heads over to your left shoulder and you'll be able to see up that slip looking at the Bell 1. Sadly though, she is stuck there as the next bridge ahead had just been completed. This is the Charles Grimes Bridge that is coming up. So now she is just Melbourne's Maritime Museum, which she can't go anywhere. On the right hand side, we have the old Seafarers Bridge. This building was always built boarding on merchant navy and seafarers as they were waiting their vessels to be unloaded and reloaded again. So up until about the 1970s and 80s, you had vessels lining up on both wharves on our left and our right hand side until the port of Melbourne fully opened up by the 1980s. They have, particularly like going to this one here, the Munich Brauhaus. If you're into German beer and people dance around in lederhosen, it is a fun evening in there. So as I mentioned before, this orange bridge that we're coming up to is called the Charles Grimes Bridge. Architecturally it's nothing spectacular, but it's a guy it's named after, Mr. Charles Grimes. He was a UK national commissioned by the Crown to come over to Australia and chart and survey various parts of it in the early 1800s. So he was actually up here before Batman was in 1803, and he surveyed this river all the way up to the next set of waterfalls, Dice Falls, as well as surveying the Maribyrnong River. Realised that this area is huge floodplains, so there's lots of fertile soil and grounds in order to grow lots of crops. Now when he returned back to New South Wales, he wanted to see what the Crown would have come for, and they did. As I mentioned about a year later, they ousted him. He then died of sickness after his eel trap. 200 years ago, this whole area with delta floodplains, and so the Wurundjeri people actually thrived on the river and they had a flora of aquatic animals to the predator. So they would dig a deep channel in the soft ground, place a hollow log in that ground, and at the downstream end of that log would have been this netting made of river reeds. Up until the 70s and 80s, this area was pretty much just mostly wharf sheds and some factories, until it was all demolished after being left derelict for a while, and now it is one of Melbourne's newest precincts. And it is called the Yarra's Edge Precinct. Now what's interesting is by the 1990s, planning was underway to regenerate all of the docklands into what it is today. And the City of Melbourne only granted planning permission to the developers, providing they built these towers to be aerodynamically friendly. So you may see they are shaped like wings and they are all sat on the same plane. Our prevailing winds do tend to come from that direction, from the south-southwesterly, because on the other side there's no shelter and you're completely exposed to the winds that come off of the bay. So they provide a giant windbreak, keeping everyone's multi-million-dollar yachts here nice and sheltered. The dock on our right hand side is Victoria Dock. This is still today considered one of the world's longest and oldest surviving docks. On the other side of Victoria Dock is Victoria Harbour, which excavation works began in the late 1880s as the Port Phillip Authority had the foresight by opening a channel at the entrance there and also diverting the Mooney Pond Creek into it. Today though it is only mostly used for recreational vessels and tourism as well.
Wala na.
Now the harbour has a depth of about 10 metres. What we've been going over at the moment, the depth has been around 3 to 4 metres, give or take the tide. Giant Ferris wheel just behind the dock sign there is known as the Star of Melbourne. I do like to call it Melbourne's white elephant, as it is running at the moment, and that's the second Ferris wheel they've had to build. The first one opened up in 2009 and had to be shut down shortly afterwards. And that's because an engineer climbed up the top to install some lighting. He noticed some huge cracks in the superstructure, climbed back down and said, guys, I don't think this is going to be very safe. So the builders went to the fabricators. The fabricators tried to blame it on the weather. Back in 2009 we had suffered a horrific heat wave. For 2 long weeks, temperatures in excess of 40 degrees Celsius and strong northerly winds. They claimed those winds battered the superstructure. However, they did finally concede and admitted to making some shoddy joints. They said, don't worry, the wheel is still under warranty, so we will build you a brand new one. So once the new one was up and running, there wasn't really much to look at because this area hadn't been developed into what it is today. It was mostly derelict sheds, wharfs. So if you did go up the top, you would have a 180-degree view of the port of Melbourne. About 4 meters taller. That's because of these beautiful grey pillars here, but it's very alive. So the bridge is named after Victoria's longest serving Premier, Sir Henry Bolte. He was in power between 1950 to about 1970. He did a lot of work improving Melbourne's freeway infrastructure, such as the CityLink freeway and also notoriously the Westgate freeway, where there was a bridge being constructed, the Westgate Bridge, that sadly collapsed during its construction. Again, that was an issue to do with steel, and I'll put my hands up there. Us Brits, we couldn't deliver on the steel in time, so they acquired their steel from another fabricator. Now, I think it's a bit ironic to name a bridge after a man that saw the collapse of another bridge. However, that's not the only reason why he was famous. He was also famous for his very tough stance. Commissioned in 1997, and it's where Victoria incarcerated the worst of the worst offenders. Now, it has become a museum. You can get the tram up there from Elizabeth Street by Flinders Street Station, and you can go on a tour. The guides will tell you how easy it was to escape from this prison. You even had school kids breaking into the prison to retrieve their footballs that had kicked over the fence. So he was the last state-sanctioned execution of a prisoner in Australia. It was Mr. Bolte. This one that green lip. So as we come through the Bolte Bridge, we're now at Port Melbourne waters. This is the largest and busiest port in all of Australia. There are 7 major docks, so where those big red and yellow cranes are, that's Swanston Dock. That's just one of 7. There are 6 container freight terminals inside that one dock alone. Over to the right hand side, rails, that's Appleton Dock. That's where all of Victoria's grain and wheat come to be loaded into the bulk carriers. We can't keep up with the demand. We have to import cement. So there are some 3,000 vessels that come into this port each year. As you follow the river all the way around to the mouth where it is Portland Bay, we have Web Dock over there where all of the roll-on, roll-off vessels come to. So all of Australia's brand new vehicles are pretty much brought into Melbourne first of all. So 400 vehicles on average per day, per year come through. So as we do spin around into Victoria Harbour, now you can see those leaning towers. See what I mean? They are really leaning over. I've been told there is a hotel at the very top, so you can't hire a room if you're not afraid of heights. Leaning over the edge like that. It's not for me, thank you. And the building that looks like a giant wedding cake, that is the Banksia Apartments. That's based on a Banksia seed pod. Banksia is a genus of tree that's endemic here to Australia. One particular subspecies solely relies on the fire ecology of the land in order to regenerate. So once those seed pods have been exposed to extreme heat, only then do they open up and disperse the seeds for the next generation. And the last things I'll mention, dead ahead is the Marvel Stadium. It used to be the Telstra and then the Etihad Stadium. This is the little brother to the MCG, has a capacity of around 50,000 people, and that's where most of our superheroes like to perform. And to the right hand side, we're coming along Melbourne's heritage vessel. fantastic. Yeah, sorry about that. Our generator went, so we lost power there. Where did I get up to? So we have our heritage vessels here. The Enterprise, one that looks like the pirate ship. That's just a replica of the original one that landed here in Melbourne in 1835. This one has been modernised. As you can see, there is a radar on the top mast, VHF antenna. Definitely does have an engine, and most importantly, some flushing toilets. There we have the Wattle. The Wattle is one of Melbourne's earliest steam-powered tug vessels. It has a double boiler steam engine, fueled by oil. And then the Alma Doppel, which was built in the late 1800s, is a timber hull schooner vessel that worked trading cargo up and down the east coast.
Can I stand up?
Yeah, you can.
Actually, no.
Christopher. Nindot siya, te. Oh, nawalay mo labad, te. Wala, gamay.
පාරවල මේ කඩේ
That's nice there.
Tacos, fall out the sky. Tacos, no head hats wide. Just open your mouth and close your eyes. It's raining tacos. Yeah, yum, 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 yum. It's raining cheese. Sharp cheese. Millis.